Hey folks, welcome to Avocado Gamescast number 68. Not with a pound sign, but with the word number written out. We're fancy like that. Anyway, we've got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to chat all about streaming. We're going to talk about Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, gaming, and Mixer. And in particular, what Mixer was trying to do and what ultimately ended up happening to it. Anyway, I'm your annoying coworker Merve. And joining me today, we've got TGIF. It's the Kappa.
Hey, I guess it is. All right. We'll pretend.
And with the inside scoop, working hard or hardly working, it's Admirax.
I like the word scoop. I get to feel like a 1940s reporter.
Yeah, you have to do that crazy accent too now, though. What's the scoop?
Listen up, everyone. We're going to talk about streaming.
Yeah, you got to do that mid-Atlantic accent that I wish I could do. So how are you folks doing today?
Good. It's a lazy Saturday for me. Cut the grass. Yeah. Now I'm just sitting inside.
I did groceries today, which is now like an event. Like
yeah.
The apartment is an event.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying that like I can turn mundane things into these big productions.
Yeah, I know. Like everything requires more planning than it used to. It's just like one extra layer of having to do stuff.
I don't know how I haven't managed to remember to wear a mask yet. I keep walking out the door without one. And it's not like we've only been doing this for like a couple of weeks. We've been doing this for months, and I keep managing to forget to wear a mask. I don't know how I keep doing it.
It's bad for me too. I always feel like people are going to look at me and be like, oh, he's one of those anti-maskers. It's like, no.
No,
I'm just absent-minded.
Because we did a pickup at a restaurant, and my wife ordered ahead, and I forgot that I was taking a different car than the one she had. So I drove all the way out there, and there was no masks in there. And it was curbside, but I was kind of like waiting longer than I thought I should have been. I was like, oh no, what if I have to go in, So luckily I kind of like beeped my horn, felt like a jerk about doing it, but that was like I think the only option I had going for me. So yeah, it's weird times right now.
For sure. And I've been, as I'm sure the two of you have been, stuck inside playing a lot of video games.
Yes.
So, Kappa, what have you been playing lately?
A little thing called The Sinking City. This is, nice. I feel like I'm going to kind of like beat myself up over this one because I've been on the record here a couple times being like, look, atmosphere doesn't make a game. You need more to it, right? Feel like I was kind of wrong on this one. I'm not super high on Lovecraft stuff, just kind of in general. Like I've never really been like it's been okay stuff to me. Like the cosmic horror and things I think are cool, but I couldn't tell you the difference between a Shogoth and I don't know what are the rest of them, but
Cthulhu, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. This was kind of like the first game that kind of like really grabbed me, and it's by the Sherlock Holmes guys. So I think maybe the layer there that kind of pulled me in was the detective-y stuff. Kind of pulled me in. But the atmosphere and everything kind of surrounding the game is really well done. It's a good looking game in a weird way. It kind of sets you into this city that's sinking. There's a giant flood took over. All of a sudden weird things started showing up. They're kind of isolated, cut off from everybody else, not really looking for help because there's a lot of weirdness going on. But the plot kind of follows a detective who shows up in this area, kind of looking at / helping to look for a lot of missing people who have gone missing in the area. For they hear the call of madness, and that's what's pulling them kind of to this area. The cool thing I think about the game itself is that it's really a detective game at the core. There's a lot of Batman-ish type things going on where you're going into detective mode. Another thing I hate, but it works when the game is centered around it a little bit more than I think maybe with Batman. I like the settings. I like the scenes. I thought the missions were strange in a good way, like in a Lovecraft way, I guess. Kind of like with the show, I think that it's dealing with some stuff. A lot of people are pointing out, hey, this thing is actually kind of, racist, obviously. And so I think that's one of the things that the game has had to deal with. There's a character who's kind of, got some issues going on. And there's a disclaimer at the beginning of the game, like, hey, we're kind of presenting this as it was for the time, which I don't know. I mean, maybe good, maybe bad, but I can see that kind of being a little bit controversial as the game goes on. Long-term discussions on it. but they present it kind of more in the lines of what Lovecraft presented, which I think had some problems. Game looks good, plays really well. I played it on EA Access, and like I was saying when I talked about this game might be my game of the year, I think that one of the things is this was one of the very first Epic exclusives that's now kind of showing up somewhere else, right? So now that Epic exclusive means more Epic for a little bit, it's exclusive. Maybe a better time to refresh what we think about the Epic Store. I think we might get more into that later, but the game itself played really well, fun times. I finished it probably about maybe 15, 20 hours. It's got a neat little open world going on. If you're into kind of detective-y stuff, but also the Lovecraft things, both angles kind of work to get me pulled into the game. So kind of a recommend for me. That's pretty much it. It snuck under my radar, honestly, because I think I'd kind of chalked it off with, maybe I'm not going to check this thing out for a while because it looked like it was going to be Epic Store exclusive. I don't have anything against the Epic Store even. It's just I thought if it's going to be on there for a long time, I might not see it anywhere else. And Epic doesn't usually do big sales. They usually do it for free or for nothing. So being more of a sale buyer, that's why I thought that. But it's not a bad game at all.
I remember their booth at it was either E3 or PAX. But it was a really cool booth, and they had these two people in costumes, like these fish, freaky fish
like
people.
Like Innsmouther look? Yeah.
Yeah. And the costumes were just so well done. I had faith that the design of this game, at least at the very minimum, was going to be really thick and rad.
Missing PAX this year has really been like we do an annual trip to like Orlando, and then PAX was like our other like annual trip as a family. And missing that this year has been really painful. Like not going up to see like my Seattle friends and stuff, but also like that's such a cool, weird like culture almost. It's almost like visiting a foreign country is the best way I can describe it. But like missing that this year has been really tough for us too. But thinking about like all the weird, cool booths and stuff, that's one thing I do miss.
Yeah, I hope that since, and maybe this is an unfounded fear, but since Sony's been kind of skipping out PAX and Microsoft's been doing their own thing, I hope this is just a temporary reprieve from conventions and not like kind of the death knell.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I enjoy them. And E3 is not something I ever got to go to, obviously, but E3 going from the fans to the reporters and journalists only back to the fans, I think has been kind of a thing that maybe people noticed, but PAX having always been for the fans. And weirdly, I feel like in the past couple ones, getting more tilted towards the journalists, I think was kind of a mistake. So maybe that's the part that resets and they say, look, this is just going to be for the fans again. The last 2 or 3 PAXs felt a little bit different to me in not a bad way. I don't know how you keep all that stuff kind of aligned, but that'd be the one hopeful end for me, is that if it goes back towards being more of a fan experience, less of a media thing.
Plus, I mean, I think cities like Seattle would have a vested interest in keeping them fan-oriented because, people are going to restaurants or staying at hotels.
Yeah, and Seattle kind of changes for PAX a little bit. That whole downtown area kind of takes on a little bit of a life of its own that I didn't usually see on normal, weekends. It's kind of a cultural shift in some ways. You kind of get rid of some of the tech bros and more some of the cosplayers in a way. So.
I think you'll find there's more overlap than you think.
Yeah. So, Admirax, what have you been playing?
So, like I said on the last episode, I was taking a long break from video games, but earlier today, actually, I picked up. I'm a couple years behind, but I picked up God of War.
Yeah. Oh, nice. The 2018 reboot. Nice.
It's super fun so far. I'm not very far into it, obviously, but it's super fun so far. I can see why everybody was calling each other boy a couple years ago. Yeah. So I'm really enjoying it. I was worried initially. This is something I've noticed with games, and I was trying to figure out how to phrase this. It seems like in the past few years, games have become, and I'm going to sound like such a capital G gamer saying this, but it seems like games have become a little too easy. Like there's a certain like fluidity to combat that I think is kind of reduced the difficulty of a lot of battle in games now.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I think for me, it kind of comes from the idea that like the ultimate combat skill is parry. Does that make sense? And like so many games kind of pushing that onto you. And I think people kind of maybe ran with that from like the Dark Souls series, thinking like, oh, people really seem to love this whole like if I hit the button at the right time, I do a special move or something like that. And it's creeped into a lot of things, but I too find it a little bit easy, honestly. Once you learn the game's timing, like from there, it kind of gets a little easier, like you're saying.
I first noticed it in Arkham City, especially, where you're just kind of doing these long combos of fighting the mooks, and that was fun on one hand because you're Batman, you're supposed to be kicking butt, and on the other hand, I think it's made more. I don't know I don't know what specifically about it I'm not super enjoying. Anyway, all of that to say, I think God of War does have that same kind of very fluid style of combat, but it was fun. I just had my first like big boss battle, and I actually did find it mildly challenging. So I have hope that the rest of the game is going to be challenging.
It is good. It's one of the ones I felt like I enjoyed maybe more than some of the other hyped games at that time. I definitely found myself going through it. The one thing I think, I don't know, I don't want to blow anybody up, but a lot of people talk about, oh, this talks a lot about fathers and sons, and it really echoed like maybe with their relationships, but like being a dad, like I don't know, I felt different about it. I'll just put it that way. I didn't feel like it was speaking to me as a father, and more of like, okay, don't be like this,
right?
More than anything. It wasn't really like, oh yeah, it's tough to be a dad. No, it's tough to be a dad, but not for these reasons, So, but I'm that's not. Don't let that bring you down in the story, because I actually really did enjoy it a lot more so than some of the other ones at that time.
Yeah, and I confess I haven't played any of the other God of War games. I just kind of saw clips.
Oh, you're good with.
Yeah. I kind of figured because the clips.
The other ones have a little bit more like spectacle and a more like set.
Yeah. So it seemed like something that would really appeal to like high school boys. Be like, yeah, that's awesome.
You nailed it. It's definitely one of those games where like it probably looks better like on a YouTube video of like, hey, look at this insane fight of this giant god. But all the stuff getting up there too is not just kind of cringy, but also kind of problematic. So you're probably fine with not really running that series.
Yeah, it hasn't aged super duper well, unfortunately.
I figured as much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned like the kind of parrying combat, and like this is not exactly what I'm going to talk about, but like I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima recently. It has exactly that same kind of combat where you're blocking and parrying with the weapons and then waiting for your opportunity to strike. But I think the way they've kind of made it, they've kept the fluidity but kind of upped the challenge, is by like giving the enemies a lot of tools at their disposal. So you're not just pressing this like press parry to win kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. If you there are two ways to kind of make it more complicated. There's like give you a lot more stuff to memorize or give you a lot more stuff to deal with. And I think giving you like more varied enemy encounters is how they've kind of solved that problem or squared that circle.
Right.
Yeah, and I like the idea of that, especially because you mentioned having a lot of stuff to memorize. That is my least favorite style of combat. Like I appreciate that if other people like that, that's great. But I can't remember anything as far as
combos and stuff.
Doing combos and special moves. That's why I can't play like Mortal Kombat. Because when I get into a tense situation, I just want to smash every button possible. So if I have to remember more than like say 3 button presses, I'm gonna not be using some kind of combat feature.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Even replaying Spider-Man was one of those things where like I went through probably half the game forgetting that there was that one button you could push to web people, and I was like, well, how do I kill this guy? Because I got back into it, I just couldn't remember. I was like, oh yeah, there's that one weird button that you push to web up somebody and then attack them, and it's like a whole separate button, and I know exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah, no lie. I actually sometimes before, like, you can pause Ghost of Tsushima and go into the menus at pretty much any time. Like, sometimes during combat, I'll pause the menu and, like, go into the technique tree to remind myself what the button presses are. And it's literally just different numbers of triangle button.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just can't
exactly.
remember
Like,
how many times I'm supposed to hit triangle.
Yeah.
Like, is it 3 or 2?
Those are the worst, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was in Death Stranding, but there was some move that you're supposed to do, like, kind of near the end for a boss battle. I won't spoil anything, but there's one specific move that makes the boss battle, like, much, much easier, and I had never, up until that point, actually used that move.
Yeah.
And so I was having a really hard time with this boss battle. I'm like, what the hell am I doing wrong? And I had to look it up, and all these, Reddit posts and what have you, where it's saying, oh, that boss battle's so easy. What a gimme. Like, oh no, I have become bad. I have become bad at playing games. And it turns out I wasn't pushing X at the right time,
Oh my gosh, yeah. So as for what I've actually been playing, I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima, but I also last night just finished the new Paper Mario game, The Origami King, which is actually the first Paper Mario game I've ever played.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
didn't really grow up with Nintendo consoles.
Mm.
So I think the series kind of had its birth as more of an RPG franchise, and as it's grown, it's transitioned more into like an adventure game with like some RPG elements and some puzzle elements thrown in. So this is a lot more on. It's almost like a point and click adventure, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I don't think it's. I think just going where I'm going, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to end up with a bad result if you kind of change the genre of the game. But like the kind of overall end product is a little confused. Like it feels like it's 3 halves of games stuffed together instead of like one full game, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a lot of the reviews have been kind of pointing that out, that it feels like a collection rather than a complete story or something like that.
Yeah, it's not a very cohesive game, unfortunately. And like, I'm not actually going to bash on this game because I don't think it's a terrible game. I think it's an okay game. But it's an okay game that has like a lot of really good parts and a lot of really bad parts, more than something that's just kind of mediocre all the way through, if that makes any sense. So like, I think it's super duper creative in a lot of parts. Some of the world designs are really inspired, like this like Japanese autumn forest area that they've got going on, where everything's like in shades of gold and red, and there's like a shogun temple and an amusement park kind of layered into it. Yeah, so like so they have some like really inspired world design when you start getting into like origami castles and things like that, and you can see how they've like folded up the paper to make the environments. There's a lot of really cool stuff in just like the general world design. Unfortunately, it's also kind of a really tedious game.
Yeah.
Like, and there are lots of games where exploration is almost its own reward, and even like a lot of other Nintendo games. Like I played Super Mario Odyssey a few years ago, and just exploring those levels is a lot of fun. But in Paper Mario, it seems like everything you explore kind of does something predictable. Like if you see something that looks kind of like a puzzle, you know that if you solve it, you're going to get either a collectible or a weapon or a bunch of coins. You're never really surprised by anything. And sort of on top of that, the combat system is a little weird because it's almost just like you're solving puzzles, and it really punishes not solving puzzles perfectly.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm that guy. When like you click the one thing, it turns one thing on, and it turns the other thing off. I just click it for 10 minutes until it falls into place, rather than like sits there and thinks about it. So that's not my style.
like I'm normally fine doing those kinds of puzzles, but the problem with this is that you have a certain number of attempts to do it, like a certain number of moves you can do. Your moves get locked in once you've done them, so you can't undo, and you have a set amount of time. And that just becomes this whole like weird, stressful thing. Whereas I think if they took out kind of the perfect puzzle solving and just made it so that you could optimize arrangements for better attacks depending on the areas of the battlefield in which your attacks hit, kind of like they do with the boss battles, where there's not always like a perfect solution, but some arrangements are better than others. I think that would have actually worked better. It made everything a little less stressful.
It seems kind of odd to me because it seems. Can you turn that off? Is there a difficulty setting there at all, or is it just?
Nope. It's all one difficulty. It's a game that it's kind of geared a little bit towards children in the way it's
That's what I
written.
was gonna say. There's no way my kid would want to deal with that. And I mean, I always thought Paper Mario, not being kiddie, but I know
Like family friendly,
people hate
right?
when you say that. Yeah, but I mean, I would not have a second thought about buying a Paper Mario for my kid because typically it's some light RPG. It's a little bit of stat management, but it's not the kind of game where it's going to frustrate you. I mean, you could have, at least the older Paper Marios, I know you haven't played them, but they were not about that at all. They were much more about like a light RPG experience, basically.
Yeah, the difficulty is just so out of whack. It starts off ultra difficult, and then gets a lot easier, and then kind of ramps up the difficulty from there. It's not honestly like I can see like teenagers being able to kind of deal with it, but if you're 10 and under, it's not really a great
Yeah,
game
it's odd.
to like
I mean,
give to them.
it just sounds like a
Unfortunately.
misstep, I think, in some ways. I wish you could have played some of the older Paper Marios because in a way they're really fun games, but the style of game that they are is much more like it's a very accessible, fun version of Mario that's kind of slowed down almost, and you replace the action with some kind of decisions in combat. I don't know. It's a weird step to take the series in, I think, and it sounds like, at least from the reviews and things I've been hearing, that it's not one that is actually very popular with the fans.
So is that in line with the? So I played the very first Paper Mario, and I don't remember almost anything about it, but I remember really enjoying it when I was a kid. Is that kind of in line with the rest of the Paper Mario series? Because it seems like people enjoyed the first couple games and then haven't been as excited about the rest of the series.
I think my wife is a huge Paper Mario fan. I probably played all of them at different times, and I think what each version has done is maybe added one feature that kind of took away from what Paper Mario kind of used to be, right? I think the hallmark of the series is probably Thousand Year Door. I think that's the one that people tend to like most, which was the GameCube one. That one was like your probably a lot of places Game of the Year level game. Since then, like every version has added one or two things on top of Paper Mario that have moved it. I don't know, kind of out
of the realm of RPG and more to like a general kind of adventure title.
Right.
And they brought back some of that for this game, but like in kind of a half-assed way, to be honest. And again, it's not like it makes it a bad game or an awful game. It's just you get the sense that they could have done it in a better or more fitting way. That's like, the general sense I get when I play it.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe Nintendo sometimes does this from my perspective. Is they sometimes, I feel like, struggle to find out what maybe like the tone or the theme or just like little things about how the series fits into like the Nintendo universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what makes Paper Mario?
The last Star Fox is a pretty good example of this.
Yeah, I'm guessing, if I had to guess, like probably the conversation is, well, what makes this different than a lot of the other Marios we have going on? What does Paper Mario do differently? And I think for some reason the answer they landed on was puzzles. And I'm not sure that that's what the audience would say if you said, hey, what makes Paper Mario different? I don't think they'd say puzzles. But I think that's kind of the answer for some reason that popped up when they started to internally say, what do we do with this game?
Yeah,
And
I think it's really been like the Mario and Luigi series, which is now kind of on ice since Alpha Dream went bankrupt. That was supposed to be their RPG, and then Paper Mario is going to be more like their adventure title. But there's no new Mario and Luigi game, so
yeah,
you know they're kind of deprived on that front. And often Nintendo like gets the core of their game like really dead on. So like Super Mario Odyssey was not my favorite game of the year when it came out, but it was a really good game because it at its core understood what it wanted to be. And Origami King, it feels like it's being pulled in about 3 or 4 different directions, all of which are intriguing on their own, just all mixed together don't make a lot of sense, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much in line with what most people have kind of been feeling on the game as well. So I don't think you're alone there.
Yeah, and like this is not a game that makes me like super angry, or a game that I'm like, saying don't play this, or a game where like, oh, this is really bad. No, it's okay. It's not like awful on the whole. It's just
yeah.
could have been
I
better.
think when you've been on the streak of hits that Nintendo has been on too, you're bound to have that one that's a 7 out of 10 and maybe just doesn't excite people as much, but it doesn't mean it's a bad game. It just means this one wasn't in that perfect wheelhouse that they've been on lately.
Yeah, if you want me to dump on a Nintendo game from earlier this year, I will gladly tell you how awful Tokyo Mirage Sessions is. But on a more positive note, let's kind of move on to the meat and potatoes of this episode, where we're going to talk about streaming, which is a fun thing that we can all participate in, both as a streamer and as a viewer. So I think kind of all of us have some experience on both ends of this. Like I've done some streaming, and I've also done a lot of watching of streaming. I'm curious what your kind of experiences with streaming have been.
So starting out for me, I was one of those people who said, why would anyone watch a video game get played? You know what I mean? It was like something I just couldn't imagine doing it. And my gateway to streaming, honestly, was Kit Boga. I don't know if anybody's watched or heard of him, but he doesn't even play video games. He'll do it every now and then when he's got something for him. But what he does is he's a scam baiter, right? So he'll bait people into playing, into talking to them, trying to scam him out of money. He plays a bunch of different characters, grandmas, and kind of like Valley Girls almost, like different characters to kind of suck them into his world. And then he spends hours talking to them and wasting their time. And it's hilarious stuff. That was kind of my first entry into streaming. From there, I kind of got into the just chatting world of Twitch, which is kind of almost more like talk shows in some ways. There's a lot of weird stuff out there. People doing just incredible stuff with streaming technology. Sushi Dragon is one that really kind of struck me early on, who's just absolutely insane with what he can do with the tech that's available. So that was kind of my gateway, and from there I went into watching a lot of GTA RP was a big thing for me for a while, stream wise, which is people playing just regular like GTA heavily modded on separate servers, where they would role play as a cop or a car thief, or one of my favorite ones was someone who just literally role played as a receptionist at a hospital, and it was just kind of like had that attitude, just that attitude of like, oh no, here you guys come again. Oh, you used in cops doing all this cool stuff, but just ruining my day with your drama, things like that were what I really got into, and only then really did I start getting into the games, and I think that I don't know if that's typical for how I got into streaming, at least, or how other people get into it. But for me, that's kind of where I went with it. And in that kind of journey of finding streaming, you kind of find what does and doesn't work for you as a viewer.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, I think there's a big pull, at least on Twitch. I know we'll get into Mixer, and Mixer's a total different community, honestly, or was a totally different community, honestly. But at least on Twitch, you've got a lot of streamers who really just they sell the entertainment experience more than even what the game they're playing is sometimes. They're sometimes called a variety streamer, but really they could play just them staring at a wall, and that's really what you're there to watch, right? It's just them being
you watch
them.
their reactions.
Right. And in some ways that's a good stream, but in some ways it can get really, really annoying really quick if you're not just totally jibing with that personality. And that's kind of where I found myself pulling away from streaming for a little bit, actually, is because I was getting more into it. It's like, well, everybody seems to like this guy, but I can't get into him because, he dies playing this game where you're going to die a million times, and it's 15 minutes of rage, and that's what the people were there for, but it wasn't really for me. It was more maybe something that I would imagine I would have been into as a 15-year-old, So that kind of put me off for a while.
I'm super glad Dr. Disrespect wasn't around when I was a teenager, because I would have been a little shit.
Yeah.
And gotten into whatever the hell he was doing.
So, I mean, from there, I found out that really kind of where I still like the Let's Players. I still like a lot of the streamers that I started out with, the just chatting folks. But I found where I really kind of find my fit is in Twitch, at least. It's kind of a derogatory term to call someone a 60 viewer Andy, right? Which means, they're kind of in that middle pack. They're good enough to be partnered, but they're not really exploding. But you know what? That's kind of where I really enjoy watching streams right now. You get to actually interact. You feel like your what you type in chat is noticed rather than just a stream of emote spam like in some of the other big ones. And it was a really good fit for me, and that's kind of where I find myself spending most of my stream watching time these days, outside of like Sushi Dragon or Kit, who do have tons of viewers, but they keep their community feeling very small. Some of the bigger ones that I watch don't really care. They're there for the big numbers. But that 60 viewer sweet spot I found is like kind of where I like to live when it comes to watching people play games.
Interesting, yeah. For me, my journey was more like I kind of was ignorant of Twitch until Twitch Plays Pokemon hit it big a few years ago. And once people started doing all these weird Twitch experiments, I kind of got into those. Then I was streaming some stuff myself for a while. And then I kind of got back into it when I started watching speedruns a little more often. Usually nowadays I don't watch streams live. I usually watch VODs of speedruns. But watching people perform at a super duper high level, it's almost, this is gonna do a little bit of weird analogy. It's almost like watching sports. Yeah, I can play soccer casually, but watching people professionals play soccer is a lot of fun, right?
Right.
That's kind of what it is for me. I'll beat a game and then I'll watch somebody else beat that game in 2 hours.
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is using it to watch people who can do stuff that I could never dream of doing.
So for me, I think I first got introduced to streaming when I realized that I was not going to be able to play PT myself. That opportunity was denied to me. So I was like, shoot, how do I get the experience of playing PT without actually playing PT? So I found some streams of it and watched the whole thing and loved every second of it and became incredibly bitter. But that kind of introduced me to streaming as a concept. I watched a little bit of horror streaming, but I admit I didn't really get into streaming until I was hired at Mixer. And so then I kind of got integrated into the world that way. Nowadays, when I watch streaming, it's usually people I know personally, and I'll hang out in their stream for about an hour. But to your point, Kappa, yeah, I think 60, anywhere from 30 to 60 is a good audience, because that's just enough participation where you feel like the streamer is kind of engaged with the audience, but it's also not, like you said, it's not just emoji spam and horrible jokes or memes I don't even understand.
Yeah,
30 to 60 is a good sophomore college class size.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think there's this weird I don't know. Like it's like a sliding scale of like interaction with the streamer versus hype, right? Like
Right.
it's not great to be in a 5 viewer stream most of the time because you almost feel like you're having to do like what do they call emotional labor almost? Like you're almost
Mm-hmm.
having to pull like stuff out of the streamer because they're usually more engaged with the game or this or that. So you're almost trying to pull it out of them and be like, hey man, talk to us. We're sitting here, you know?
Right.
Whereas like 30 to 60, you're starting to get that conversation going between you and the streamer and the game and things that are happening on screen and stuff. And it almost feels more like you're watching a show than you're watching a friend play a game from the couch. Does that make sense? I know there's some people who want
Exactly.
that friend playing a game on the couch, but finding that sweet spot was really hard for me because for a while I was like, well, obviously if they had 10,000 viewers, they're better. But then I really kind of quickly learned, okay, 10,000 viewers is not where I want to be. And I think that most people who maybe first get into streaming by people who are into streaming, they probably say, hey, you know what? If you're going to watch anybody, watch Dr. Disrespect or, you know what I mean? Like one of those huge streamers,
No.
you know? But no, I mean, and if that's your initial introduction, like, what the hell is this? Why would I watch this all day? You know, and you don't make that connection. Versus if someone says, hey, you know, I follow this person who's a pretty small streamer, follow this. And I feel like that's probably for 90% of people I know, kind of our age, I guess, if I want to put it that way. That's probably, I think, a better place to start is in some of those medium to smaller size communities.
Yeah, like it'll help you kind of get your bearings almost.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I feel like, watching the bigger guys who are like deeply enmeshed in Twitch culture, it's a huge culture shock almost.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you have all these memes flying around and emotes that I don't
Yeah,
even understand.
They have 100 in jokes that you will never
Exactly.
quite get the same experience out of. Yeah, it's like tuning into a TV channel that's speaking a language you don't speak.
Yeah, so having played games, you know, specifically stuff like Destiny with a lot of younger folks, it's just a natural crowd that plays it, you know. I mean, I've had those moments before I'm like, what do you mean this was PogChamp? You know, and it's literally how gamers that grew up with streaming talk. Do you know what I mean? There'll be something that happens in game as we're playing. They'll say PogChamp or they'll say KEKW, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, what does this mean? You know, like, so you almost have to go like translate it, you know, and figure out, okay, well, so PogChamp is like, oh, that was cool that happened. It was hype. It was awesome. You know, KEKW is okay. That was kind of goofy, silly type stuff. So as you lean into like that culture, you start to figure out that it's not necessarily what's happening. Yeah, exactly. But it's not actually what's happening in the picture even that is what they're reacting to. It's the way that reaction is used on Twitch. And they literally will talk like that. I mean, have conversations like that. So the more you kind of enmesh yourself into that world, you start to realize that Kappa means one thing, you know, even though it's fucking frustrating. I've been Kappa for, I don't know, 20 years now, long before Twitch even existed, you know? So
is Kappa a Twitch thing now?
No, yeah, oh, it's huge. It's
Kappa's like a big Twitch emote thing that I don't understand.
Yeah, so generally it's just kind of, I don't know, it's not even used consistently across different places. So like Kappa's kind of more like the like I'm being sarcastic emote. Like whatever I just said, but not really. But sometimes really, but also not. You know what I mean? So
it's like it's a troll emote.
Yeah,
almost.
yeah, it's a troll
Gotcha.
emote.
Yeah, at a certain point, it feels like Twitch can sometimes, especially in the big channels, it's just like 10,000 people all talking to themselves.
Yes, exactly. You're right. And only recently has Twitch even made it even kind of able to have a conversation between viewers, right? So Twitch chat is almost directly oriented towards the streamer, right? And then the streamer does or doesn't read stuff. And then every now and then, though, people will have these little in-conversations with each other. You used to have basically an add-in. BTTV, very popular. Almost everybody who watches a lot of Twitch has it. And it's how you talk to other people, more or less, because otherwise in a scrolling chat, it just gets missed. So I've found that that's kind of like the shortcut of like, hey, if you want to talk to me, you at me. And only recently has Twitch added an actual reply system for the conversations that are happening outside of what the streamer might be talking about. Now that's kind of important. You think that would be something, put into the design. But I don't really think that maybe Twitch thought there would be much of that conversation, viewer to viewer. I think they designed it more, hey, they're going to want to talk to the streamer. Who cares if they want to talk to each other? But I've found that the way the community works, especially some of the smaller streams, I found that to be a real thing. It is how people talk to and build their community around people talking to each other, whether they facilitate that or not. One of the things I've noticed with a lot of streamers too, this is really there's been a lot of psychological talk lately on Twitch about how being a streamer and creating content and managing communities and all this stuff runs you down, takes a lot out of you. There's some very high profile suicides and stuff like that in the community. And one of the things I've noticed early on is there's kind of this curve, right? When you're growing and the stuff that you'll have to kind of almost put up with in your channel. The way people talk, and because you see them as a viewer, and Twitch really pushes viewers. That's your metric that leads to you getting partnership, that makes this basically a job rather than something you do for fun, right? And I've been a mod for a lot of 20, 30 viewers, people who are pushing for that partnership number, right? So when you're talking about building the community, it's really easy to say, well, I'm not going to let people come into my community and say this or that, right? It's really easy to say that. But then you start to notice, hey, I got 5 viewers and 2 of them are being jerks. What do I do, right? And so that's kind of where the feedback between the streamer, the mod, and the community really starts to become an issue, right? So I've noticed that's kind of when you're talking about the streams that you're watching, the streams that you're viewing, understand that if you're going and watching a smaller streamer, that the fact that they're letting people, or people seem to be kind of out of line and the streamer's not doing something about it, we've got strong moderation on the Avocado. All of us are used to stuff that would 100% not fly in Twitch chat, would get you banned where we all hang out, right? Yeah. But just because the streamer is allowing that, I would tell people be cautious, because that's not really the same as condoning it. I know we would say yes it is, but it's a different world, it's a different community. You've almost got to, at least to get your foot in the door to build the community, at least let some of that stuff maybe fly a little bit more, unfortunately.
Ultimately
sorry, go ahead.
Ultimately that's why I never streamed, is because I have zero desire to kind of entertain that world of toxicity that you kind of just have to have as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. You almost have to have it at first. And I think once you get bigger, you can kind of say, look, guys, this doesn't fly in my chat. I know this is how people talk everywhere else on this website, but it's not how you talk here. And I've seen small streamers do that, don't get me wrong. But it's hard until you can find that voice, or exactly decide, this is how I'm going to be as a streamer. A lot of times it's just people like, hey, I have fun playing this game, and it'd be more fun if I had more people to play it with. So sometimes I like to post, hey, check this stream out in the OT. I don't want people to go in there and see that the chat is, at least somewhat, to our standards, being a little bit of, toxic, and assume that that's what the streamer is like or about, or that's who they are. Streamers are weird with how they interact with chat even. Sometimes they just don't notice it, they don't see it. And then the other thing is sometimes I've noticed
even as a viewer, I ignore chat almost entirely.
Yeah, especially on a Games Done Quick type stream or something where the chat really is adding nothing,
Oh, they made GDQ subscribers only now, so it's cut down a lot on the crap in chat.
But I would say even past all that, understand that that streamers tend to see the negative stuff. Right. So if I don't know what, there's probably some kind of, theory about how this works, but I could type 50 positive things in a streamer's chat, and then the time I say, hey, you're a little quiet, that's the one that they notice. You know what I mean? And it becomes something they kind of almost fixate on, right?
Well, and that's human nature too.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like, hey, you're doing great in this section. So they almost always notice that. So be careful when you're going into a stream and kind of correcting or trying to interact with that way, I would say in some ways. But most streamers, I think they tend to try to figure out how the mechanics of it work too, but that's sometimes a point of contention or a point of pain, I guess, for them in some ways. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think getting into streaming, it doesn't need to be as daunting as it is. It can be kind of annoying in some ways at first, and you kind of almost got to push through it until you find the content. I would guess just like movies or anything else, you've got to find that director or that, but with streaming, I think you're presented with so many options, and it's not like popularity is a shortcut to quality. Is I guess the one thing I would really say as far as what I would tell people just getting into it.
Yeah, it's hard to know what you'll enjoy until you start exploring.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I don't get a lot out of watching, a regular person just kind of play through a game. It either has to be like something that kind of breaks the game in a fun way, or games that are almost kind of made for streaming, like Fall Guys right now
Right.
is huge. I'm sure it's blowing up on Twitch right now. That's something that I kind of enjoy being watched streamed, because that's something where the streamer's reactions to it kind of enhance the experience. But other stuff where they're like shrieking over, I don't know, like BioShock, who cares, right?
Right. I totally understand what you're saying. So getting maybe a little bit into Mixer specifically, but I feel like there's always like this, like, I don't know, this skill set that a streamer has to have, right? Like either you're insanely good at the game, right?
Yeah.
Or you've got a great personality. And when you can get somebody who kind of even has a little bit of overlap there, right? I think that's when you start to step into your Dr. Disrespects, your Ninjas, your big household name streamers is what I'd say, because they're good at the game and they've got the personality. And that's kind of like the holy grail for streamers, right? I've watched people who are insanely good at Valorant, for example. They just can't miss. They get all those headshots. They're that good, but they put you to sleep watching them, right? Or on the other end, I got that guy who's cracking 50 jokes a second, but like he's dying to the the intra boss in BioShock. I can't watch that. You know what I mean? You've got to have that balance of skill and personality. And I think that's what a lot of people initially kind of need to focus on as a streamer, and then as a viewer is find what mix of that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, getting kind of into Mixer and how that kind of differed from Twitch. One thing that Mixer had that kind of set it apart from Twitch was how it did audience interaction.
Yeah,
Was a little bit different from Twitch, at least in my experience. I don't have super much experience with Mixer. I've watched a few streams on there a few times while the service was still running. But one thing that struck me was how, I guess, much more civil it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In a way.
It's not even close. The communities there were 10,000 times better than your average Twitch stream. A lot of what I said about tolerating that stuff, it goes out the door when it comes to Mixer. I don't know. I don't want to put Admirax on the spot here, but like for me, I think that Mixer technologically was superior to Twitch in every way. I think community-wise, Mixer was better in every way, and it's just one of those things where it's just the culture, for whatever reason, was all on Twitch, and I think
first mover advantage is a big deal.
Huge
business.
Huge. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, it's always been frustrating, or not frustrating, but it's been one of those things where like I see it, it's just like, it's interesting to me from a standpoint of how did it go wrong, because even people who like were Twitch diehards, when they saw how like the Mixer latency, for example, they were blown away. It was like, how can it be this good? Because you're used to that 3 to 5 second delay on Twitch, right?
Yeah.
Little things like started to pop up, and it was just like the technological part of it, and then the community part of it was very wholesome. And I've got, we all talk about gamer culture this and gamer culture that, but I think in a weird way that wholesomeness, or like that was almost what pushed people away from Mixer. like sadly, like I don't mean that as like that should have been that way, but I think what happened is they went in there and they like everybody was being nice, everybody was goofing. There wasn't that like weird negativity that you see in a lot of like popular Twitch streams. I think people took that as like, oh, this is the streams for the goodies, like almost like how people are like Nintendo is for the kiddies. I kind of took away that like people didn't know what to do with a positive community, so their reaction was to think that it was bad for some reason.
I think, yeah, when you see that stuff, you think of it as not like mature. You think of it as wimpy.
Right. Yeah, this is where the kids stream, or something like that. And the technology there was just very comprehensive. It was driving people to the site, I think, because a lot of people just couldn't believe it. And then what I started to notice from people is who would go over to Mixer and watch it was, in a weird way, they were saying that the community wasn't for them because it was too nice. It was too welcoming. It was too, however you want to describe it. I'm serious.
That's disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so many people just kind of want an outlet for their nonsense.
Right.
And a lot of people see really toxic places as almost a place where they kind of toughen up, right? And if you can't deal with it, then you're a wimp.
Right.
That whole nonsense.
I think that's a good way to put it. Is I think the kind of maybe the mentality was, well, I need a place where I can be myself because I'm too unique, or I'm too this, or I'm too that, and Mixer isn't the place. I think maybe similar to how people reacted to maybe like early Nintendo, where hey, this is for kids, this isn't for me. I'm a shooter fan, or whatever, and then they push themselves away. I maybe saw some of that go on with the people I would talk to about Mixers. Like, oh, that place is for kids. That's all I know about it. I haven't actually even watched anything over there, but it's for kids. That's what I've heard.
I mean, I guess to play devil's advocate, and I don't like to do that a lot, but I can see there being a certain lack of appeal if you feel like at a certain point you're not going to be allowed to swear or what have you. But having modded several Mixer chats myself, we let a lot slide in certain instances, and I saw some pretty hideous shit that got deleted, at least from our main channel chat. So.
And as a viewer, I appreciated that. Like, I was on the other end of that. I was like, I would much rather not have to deal and read with all that. I don't know. I guess it depends on where your personality is as a gamer, right? If what you value as a gamer is the ability to say, things that are socially unacceptable anywhere else, but it flies because you're gaming, then yeah, maybe that is, but that makes you a bad person. That doesn't have anything to do with Mixer versus Twitch. So I saw a lot of the people I thought who were probably more toxic not want to even look at Mixer because they thought that it wouldn't allow that. And I was like, good. That's how it's supposed to be.
That comes down to kind of the moderation, right? If you have moderation that's a little that creates a friendlier community, you're going to attract people who want that friendlier community, and I think people should want it. A community where we're not bigoted or being jerks, I don't think that's a kiddie community. I think that's just, a nice place to be. But for some people, that's, a baby fun times.
Yeah, and I think if you laid out kind of like the pros and cons between it, I think you'd be hard pressed to say that community-wise and tech-wise, Mixer wasn't better. And I know first adopter, or first being in the first space helped Twitch a ton, but I don't know why the at least the migration of some of the bigger name streamers never really happened until they were paid to do so. So
actually, you did mention the tech, and that's something I kind of wanted to get into, which is like this low latency tech kind of facilitated interaction that you couldn't easily do on Twitch, which is like real time effects that happen in game and stuff like that. So I'm actually curious, and I don't know if Admirax or anyone can speak to this, which is, was it kind of like, here's this tech, and now what kind of audience interaction can we build around it? Or was it like the kind of audience interaction that people wanted that fueled them to create, like fueled Beam to create the tech?
Yeah, I guess I can't speak to that as I joined Mixer long after it was Mixer and wasn't around for the Beam time.
Beam days before the Microsoft acquisition, yeah.
Right. But I think part of the appeal was the interaction with the streamer, just as a more kind of real-time thing. Like I remember that being the focus of a lot of our commercials and ad bumpers was being able to talk to the streamer and react to them winning or dying or what have you in real time and kind of feeling more like you were a part of the experience rather than watching the streamer and then reacting, 30 seconds later and, that being, it might as well be a couple of years later in internet time.
Because what happens frequently, this still happens on Twitch. Twitch has gotten better latency-wise, but this still happens. But for an example, let's say, the streamer you're watching is playing, I don't know, Mario, and they fall and die, and you go, oh, no, too bad, or something like that. But then they go, and then the next 30 seconds they load back in, and then they do it correctly. And then they see your message, oh, no, and it's like, what do you mean? Like, I just did this. And it leads to this weird, like, dialogue sometimes between streamers and the audience where it's like almost looks like you're gloating that they died. Or that you're I'm not even joking. This happens probably 50 times a day on Twitch in a stream where it's just that little bit of 10 to 30 second latency between what you type and when they read it makes it look like you're being a jerk, right? To the streamer. But you're not. You're literally just reacting to what just happened, but they're not seeing it until a minute later. So that was a huge selling point for me because seeing it in action, especially when like Mixer was kind of in its infancy, I was like, it was mind blowing being able to react to something that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that, but yeah, I think that a lot of times when you're looking at getting into streaming or looking into streaming, I think the successes that Mixer had early on were all in that kind of like space of like tech. And it drove a lot of people to the service that were interested in that side of it. Mm-hmm. But maybe in a weird way, maybe not some of the outgoing personalities in other ways. It was maybe more that person who's really good at the game and speed running and less the person who can make a ton of jokes while they're playing, the equivalent of a B movie of a game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of the wish and hope for the technology was that people could interact with the game itself. Like I know there are a handful of games where you could do that, where you could I've forgotten what it's called, but it was kind of like State of Decay but with aliens. Mm-hmm. And you could send the players like health packs, or you could spawn an alien to screw them over if you had a certain amount of sparks. And that was really fun, but I feel like that technology wasn't really around long enough for game creators to become interested in it. Yeah, or integrated at all. And I think while that technology was really cool and could have gone in a really neat direction, it had such a brief lifespan that I don't know if we're going to see that again for a little while.
Yeah, we're only starting to get those games that are like, you either get that game that's just focused just for streaming, mm-hmm. or you get the game that just, it kind of does that, but not really. But the idea of being able to drop that stuff in game was an intriguing one. I thought it was really neat. I think
like being able to vote on what happens next and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like that's something that Twitch unfortunately doesn't do super well without a lot of hacking kind of on the back end, which people have done. They've made Twitch Plays Pokemon, right? And Twitch being like having those kinds of APIs available makes that possible, but it's not like an accessible thing, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, it's done through bots or through chat or through this or through that. It's not all just clicking on this and it's in the game, like Mixer had. So, like we talked a little bit. I tried to stream. I streamed a little bit on Twitch and a little bit on Mixer to pretty much just my wife and 2 or 3 other friends. But I think early on, no matter how you were looking at it, it seemed like Microsoft was going to be in this for the long haul, which I think was why shutting Mixer down was so surprising, especially after acquiring what I would honestly consider probably two of the best options for streaming with Shroud and Ninja. If you'd have asked me at that time, hey, you can start a new streaming service with two streamers, who you got? It would probably be those two, honestly. I mean, I don't know exactly where the conversation went, internally, obviously, but I think it was the right call to get those guys in there because Shroud is unnaturally good at literally every game he tries. Whatever FPS is going to be out, he's going to be in that top tier of players, maybe just outside of like tournament level, but at a level where he's doing stuff that I can't do. So I'm going to watch. Ninja playing the most popular game in the world at a very high level with a cool personality, a lot of fans, a lot of kids that are into him, all that kind of stuff. I don't think that a lot of people are saying, I think that was the downfall. They paid them too much, but I don't really know if that's a reason. But
well, I guess I have two responses to that, and I think one is Microsoft is never afraid to cut cut a program or cut a project that they feel they're not getting a good investment on, like Windows Phone, the Zune.
The Zune still breaks my heart, honestly.
I know. And honestly, you're not the first person I've heard say that. Like, people loved the Zune. So I'm not I guess Microsoft just has an eye for, trimming the fat and being as lean as possible. So I think there's that aspect that's just the company culture, good or bad. That's what they do. They cut stuff. And then I guess to the other point, I can't really speak to Shroud as I didn't know a ton about him, but Ninja, I want to say they got him kind of at the exact wrong time. Mm-hmm. I think because he was peaking kind of right when they acquired him. And I think people were starting to move on from him, especially since he had so much controversy regarding especially sexism. And I remember the reaction at Mixer, like we were talking about, Mixer trying to be a more positive space. Their reaction to acquiring Ninja specifically when he was coming off of a lot of controversy, that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah, I think the other part of it too was he was primarily known as a Fortnite streamer, and Fortnite itself, I think, had been, the halcyon days of Fortnite being the only thing people watch were slowly fading as well. At the same time, I think that people were still into Fortnite, but not in the way that they had been, where it was literally, log in and watch Fortnite all day. My kid still is very much there, so in my house that might not be true, but you started to kind of see that shift away from Fortnite back into what I would call kind of like your classic style shooters, more towards like Valorant and all those other games right now that are kind of just you're not your battle royale shooters. But it's hard because I think, at least with him, he made his name in a way, and I think I see this a lot in football, right? We call it, like you made your name, now you're going to just go for that big contract and then cash out. And I kind of felt like that was his plan, look, I put my dues in, I grew my channel, I did all this. You're buying what I've already built, basically, in a weird way.
Right. Nobody made out better than Ninja in that whole deal.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's hard for me to say, like, was that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's easy to say a decision's, good or bad with the benefit of hindsight. But, like, going in, just reading a headline on Kotaku or wherever, where it says, Mixer has acquired Ninja, I'm thinking, oh, wow, that's a huge deal.
Right.
I'm not thinking about, like, the trends in Ninja's viewership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the plan there was all along, I think that it was going to be that Ninja was going to see a dip, I'm imagining, from people who just didn't make the transition. That's natural. But then he was going to grow, and with him, Mixer was going to grow, right? It was going to be – and then one of the great things Mixer has that we hadn't talked about yet was there's a hype train, right, or something like that, where Ninja being on the platform, getting more views would also kind of, a high tide raises all boats type effect where they're getting views to all these other Mixer streamers who are, maybe a little bit smaller but are looking for the viewer base, but it's putting views on them as well. If you're getting more Fortnite viewers, you've got the hype train bringing more views to the people. Hype train was this system on Mixer where if you were like in the last 10, on Fortnite, or the Final Circle.
Hype Zone.
Hype Zone, that's it. Yeah, sorry. If you were about basically to win a Fortnite game, or I think they added it to maybe like Rainbow Six Siege and maybe a couple other competitive type games.
I think they had it in PUBG, and I want to say Apex Legends too.
That sounds right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So what it would do is it would bring viewers to your channel, whether you had 5 people or 10 people. So you would be watching the Hype Zone thing, and then if you were in the final 10, boom, all of a sudden you got 500 viewers watching you fight in that final, like, last 10 minutes of the game. It's very similar to the NFL Red Zone idea. I don't know, but the idea being like, hey, I'm only showing you the action, right? So the idea is if I'm watching Ninja play here, and also I'm watching Fortnite stream here, now all of a sudden I'm getting all these viewers being brought in here. I don't know. I think the plan was a solid one, and it's hard for me to figure out how it all fell apart, but I would guess it probably has something to do with the fact that they just weren't getting the return on investment type thing, or, those cold hard numbers weren't there, that the plan just wasn't working, wasn't in effect the way they expected it to be. But I think they had it designed around not just necessarily to grow Ninja, but to grow everybody on the service, which was a pretty smart idea overall.
Yeah, I think the bet was certainly that people would kind of trickle out from Ninja to other to other streamers. But I don't even know if that was true on Twitch. Like,
no, it wasn't.
Would people watch Ninja and then once he was done go to some other person?
Ninja would host a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's one thing he was actually well known for, was hosting a lot of other streamers that kind of, I wouldn't say gave them necessarily their big break, but certainly boosted their viewership. Now, was he bringing people onto the platform as a whole, or was he just kind of redirecting his viewers to some other streamers? I think it's probably more the latter.
He basically grew 4 or 5 friends, is how I would put it. You saw Tim Tatman kind of make his rise around the same time. Dr. Lupo, who kind of has had typical ups and downs, but he had probably his best times when he was hanging out with Ninja. So kind of, I don't think he would occasionally host, a 100 viewer guy who was just, trying to make ends meet, but he was, a Fortnite guy. But very rarely did you see him kind of do anything community focused. It was more kind of like, hey, here's the people I play with, which is why during the whole thing I don't stream with women streamers was kind of a dramatic moment. But it's hard to tell with him, because I think he in some ways was very much in uncharted territory for a streamer that big, right?
Yeah.
I think it was easier for Dr. Disrespect, who was probably the only other one who really approached those highs, because with him he's a persona. He's something that we're familiar with in wrestling.
I suspect that a lot of that is his actual personality.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. But I mean, he can hide his bad manners or his bad gameplay or whatever, behind, hey, that's just who the character is. Whereas with Ninja, he was who he was, and I would say majority of the time he was a kid-friendly, guy, but he'd have his moments, and it would pull it back, and you start to see, okay, wow, that's not exactly what I would call kid-friendly. But what was he the right guy for Mixer? I don't know. I probably not, because I think Mixer's community, like we were maybe talking about, is a little bit less rough around the edges than what Twitch was, and I think they were a little bit less tolerant for some of those moments where he would, rage on somebody who killed them. Where I think that was kind of accepted as part of, hey, okay, he had gaming moment on Twitch, had a little bit of a different feel on Mixer.
And I mean, I think
sorry, go ahead.
I think Mixer was simultaneously maybe too kid-friendly and a little too adult. Like, I think
the most frustrating thing I had during Mixer's time, and maybe you can answer this, I don't think this is too, but like, I remember people being very big about not saying your age. Like, it was a very big, like, deal not to ever say your age. And it was confusing to me, like, as a viewer, because I remember, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, someone was playing, and, like, somebody was like, oh, yeah, I've been trying to play this game. I've been playing this game for about a year, ever since I was 12. And they'd be like, like, the stream would stop. And then they'd be like, they'd, like, delete the comment. And, like, it was jarring as a viewer. And I'm sure there was some kind of rule about it or something. But, like, I always remember that being a thing.
I remember there was a rule that, obviously you couldn't be watching, quote unquote, if you were under the age of 13. And I think that morphed somehow into some weird, like, taboo, like, about mentioning your
childhood
age,
at all?
like, even a little bit.
Yeah, it was very, because Mixer had a rating system almost for their streams. And it was like, I think there was like a, hey, this is a designed to be 18 stream. There was a like G-rated stream, and I remember watching some streamers. They're like, hey, we're about to be in, like, I think it was like if you were featured on the front page of Xbox, like when you log in, like the tab, you had to be kid friendly during that time.
You couldn't be. I want to say there's 3 different levels. There's like the kid friendly, the kind of like, I don't know, PG-13 version, and the 18 and over. And yeah, you would absolutely not be featured on the first page if you were 18 and over, because by default, if you were watching and you hadn't signed up for a Mixer account, they just assumed you were under 18.
Right. I think
Probably
that's
what they legally have to do.
Yeah, so it would kind of drive this weird scenario where you'd be watching a streamer and all of a sudden he'd be like, okay, hey guys, I'm about to be on the homepage, and like chat would basically have to be like super moderated, and like everybody had to be on their best behaviors, and it was kind of jarring as a viewer. So, I'm not saying like I'm in there, slinging out, F-bombs or anything, but like, it would be like the occasional shit or damn or whatever, and it was like all of a sudden the stream kind of flipped the switch when that front page feature happened.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Like, in like an 80s comedy where they're all like having a party, like a house party, and the parents come home and then like everyone hides.
Yeah, like the record scratched and it's like,
yeah.
Oh no. Yeah.
Yeah, gotta hide all the soda and.
Yeah, I'm making it sound worse than it really.
Like the jazz sticks.
But no, I think it was a little bit of a weird self-hamstring thing, because you also couldn't have any games that were rated M.
Right, exactly. And I remember, like, I'd be watching a guy play, a game for a while, and he's like, okay, I got to switch over to, Rocket League for the next hour because we're going to be on the front page. And it was like, all right, man, I'm not watching Rocket League. But, so there was a little bit of that feeling to it. And I think maybe that was one of the things, like I was talking about, that kind of drove that kiddie feel. Because I remember watching, just the age thing was just boggling to me, because I would watch it a lot with my son. And we watched 2 or 3 streamers kind of regularly, and like something would just come up, and my kid would be like, just somehow casually, like you could interpret his age that he was a kid, And I remember one time he got like the equivalent of like a warning, like he got his chat deleted. And they said, don't post about your age again. He was like dejected. Like he didn't want to watch the stream ever again, basically, And like I explained to him, I was like, look, it's not that. It's just a rule. You didn't do anything wrong, stuff like that. But I'm like, what if every kid was watching this not with his dad, and it's just like, man, maybe this streamer doesn't like me, because kids take different messages, from stuff like that. So I just remember that kind of being very vivid, and like that whole like age thing to me was just weird. But talking about how, maybe it does or it doesn't feed into, the perception as a Twitch community. I can imagine if you were watching, now don't get me wrong, Twitch streamers do that occasionally too, right? They'll do a sponsored stream when all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, hey, I'm not doing
don't
this.
Don't criticize Mountain Dew today, right?
Yeah. Hey, for the next 20 minutes, we're going to act like we all really love, Mountain Dew. Yeah. I've seen that before, but I would say this, like, I get it, and I think it feeds into the, the idea of like Mixer kind of being a better community, but like anywhere else, I'm sure there's people who come to the Avocado and they're like, oh, I can't be myself here. I can't talk about the stuff I talk about on Reddit here. I think that there was some of that, and I think that in general we've built a community that we like, and it's small. But I think that Mixer built a community that they liked, and it was small, and it was kind of going to be that way unless they open themselves up more to, I don't want to say embrace, but to at least allow some of the shittiness that kind of encapsulates Twitch viewers or in the community in general.
Yeah, and I remember us being really big on like Pride Month and Black History Month and that kind of thing, and trying to be super inclusive. Like, for instance, Xbox still has a wing called Gaming for Everyone, which is, their inclusivity branch, which does a lot of great things, especially with physically differently abled folks.
It showed too, just even as a casual viewer, it showed, because I always remember, I actually remember thinking, this isn't something I'm making up, I remember thinking, man, there is a lot of women streamers being featured on the front page of Mixer. I mean, and it was consistent. It wasn't like, hey guys, it's Women's Streamer Month, so we're going to do this for a month and then pretend they don't exist. A lot of the streamers I ended up watching on Mixer were women, just kind of because that seemed to be in some ways who got the attention, but also in other ways it seemed like there was a lot more, maybe because of the community being more friendly that we keep talking about. It seemed like there was a lot more just in general their streaming that I noticed.
And there wasn't, at least not that I noticed, and obviously I probably didn't explore this very much, but there wasn't a ton of like e-girl kind of stuff that I noticed.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. But...
I wasn't gonna bring it up. It's a touchy subject for guys to talk about, but yeah.
There was some like women who were just being just normal game playing people, and who would play, and I really appreciated that as a woman myself. I really appreciated the kind of acceptance,
like normalizing it.
Women don't only just play Candy Crush.
Right, and that's what it was like. Because I mean, I remember
whole E3 tweeting that article that happened recently. That was not great.
Yeah. What you're saying too, it showed up as just a viewer. Like, you noticed, like, okay, hey, they're featuring a lot of streamers, a lot of different streamers, a lot of people playing different stuff, which sounds not as important, but it is. I mean, I can only watch so much Fortnite in a given day. So I think that was kind of like a conscious move that really did show, but it's hard because go ahead.
And I will say, on the other hand, so just to give a little bit of context about what I did for Mixer, I was on the original programming team, so we did like news style or talk show kind of style shows. We were based out of actual Microsoft campus and kind of some of the Xbox buildings. And we had several women hosts of different shows, and there was some pretty heinous commenting going on in the chat. So even a place like Mixer was still getting a lot of that kind of toxicity.
I think on Twitch they call them drive-bys, right? Somebody who just comes in just to say something shitty and then get banned, right? There was for as good as the community was, there was a fair amount of that on Mixer, and I think it was because everybody who had an Xbox had Mixer on their homepage. So you're having a shitty day or a shitty game, you just want to go in and just talk some shit. Mixer made that kind of easy, weirdly.
I don't understand going through the effort of typing out a comment with a controller just to be mean.
Oh yeah.
We noticed a huge spike, like during spring break or during the summer, of drive-by comments. So obviously it's like people, letting their teenage kids play Xbox without really watching what they're doing, and teenagers are going to kind of explore the boundaries of decency as they are wont to do.
And there was a lot of that, unfortunately, I think, on a lot of the stuff that I watched that you were doing, the drive-bys, because it was like, in a way, it's like they're sticking up to the man. You know what I mean? Like, this is Microsoft, but like you already bought the Xbox,
Right.
Like you lost your chance to stick it up.
You got your money.
Yeah, exactly. So all you're really doing is just annoying, the 50 people who are watching. But yeah, I noticed the drive-bys was something kind of early on that I thought was kind of more noticeable, I guess, on Mixer. But I think it was maybe more because of that reason. Everybody's got access to it. You didn't have to make an account. But I also thought it's kind of crazy because I remember there was a streamer I would watch who'd be like, your Microsoft account is what's linked to Mixer. Like the thing that you're playing Call of Duty on tonight, that's linked.
Do you want to get shut out of Xbox Live?
And I don't know how that worked. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of community standard type thing, but
we had a huge mod team that they were pretty secretive, actually. I didn't even know most of the details of, but they were great. I knew the guy who was in charge of that whole team, and he was phenomenal.
He's probably told you to stop having
That'd be
that guy show up and win all the contests because
Yeah. You got to get rid of him.
yeah, he's draining us. But yeah, I don't know. I think what I noticed more often on not the Mixer was that the tone, the general streamers and everything, they were trying to be better than Twitch as far as like how they raise their communities. But in a lot of ways, it's also they had the benefit of learning a lot from some of the early Twitch mistakes that streamers might have made. So maybe that helped too. But I think maybe one of the other downfalls besides that age thing I was mentioning was I want to be careful saying this because I spent a lot of time watching a lot of streamers. I think generally they were good. I would just say that your average setup for your streamer on Mixer was well below what your average setup for a Twitch streamer on Mixer was. I'm talking like in terms of like having a camera, you know, like just like the actual technical aspects of the stream, having scene transitions, using OBS. A lot of them were just doing the literal like click on my Xbox, click stream now, and that's what you're watching. Whereas there's production value in a lot of Twitch streams, you know, and in a way that kind of shows when the average is so much lower. It's not a good look. And while Hype Zone was bringing me to your channel, it was pretty clear that you weren't ready to have 500 viewers here, you know?
That's interesting.
Yeah, for me, the really interesting gulf is like on the Twitch homepage, you'll see super unpolished streamers. On the Mixer homepage, you would see mostly like polished streamers.
Yeah.
But then you look at the averages across the sites, like going off the front page, and that kind of changes the picture.
Yeah, there was a Mixer streamer. I wish I could remember his name. I got a bad memory for streamer names. They all have goofy names. But there was a guy there who did, I mean, he would do like almost like a dance rave party, and he would have like 50 scene transitions. I mean, it was good stuff. I mean, it was good by any standard, right? And it was kind of like what he was known for on Mixer was having these like elaborate scene changes and like these dances and stuff. And like he would like have like a hype moment where he would like load his like BPMs from his heartbeat and like just like really like elaborate stuff, right? And the thing was, it was almost jarring to go from him then back to your average Mixer streamer who wasn't doing, I mean, literally wasn't doing scene transitions, which is at this point it's an accepted thing on Twitch that if you're, you know, anything above 50, 60 viewers and partnered, you got scene transitions. It's just not all just me staring at your face as you play a game, you know?
This is such a weird like perspective for me. Like as somebody who primarily watches speedrunners who tend to be extremely low tech.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they don't even have a camera, or like they'll have a camera but it's like an old, like a decade old 480p 20 FPS thing. Like that's my experience of like watching streaming, and it's such a different world from like the more polished streamers who have like the bigger personalities and are playing more popular games, that like I don't even think about scene transitions being like a thing. Like I know some people do it. I just, you know, thinking of it as like the thing that everyone does is so strange to me. But yeah, I guess it all comes down to what kind of content you're looking for.
Right.
And
right.
Like if you're looking for that highly polished content, then maybe you'll find it in one location more easily versus another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I remember at PAX, what was the last one? 2 years ago, I guess now. I remember Mixer had a booth, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And it was the first time I had the feeling with Mixer, at least, you know, with watching a lot of streams there and stuff, I was like, all right, we're trying to be big dogs now. Like, I really had that feeling where it's like, well, if Twitch has a booth and Facebook has a booth, we're going to have a booth. And the booth had, like, no concept. It like, kind of, and it was like, you couldn't go in there. Only our streamers could. But we really didn't have swag and we really didn't have anything going on. On the other side, they had a cool contest, right, where it was the Hype Zone. And it was like a live version of that, and it was like a game show and stuff. But then there was the other side of it that was like a corral of streamers.
Yeah.
It's like a streamer zoo.
Yeah.
It kind of was a streamers, dude.
Yeah.
Because they had like these glass boxes where people were streaming from, and you could just watch.
Yeah.
It's like a streamer menagerie.
Exactly. Yeah.
I remember walking up to it, and I was like, oh, hey, man, I watched a lot of Mixer streamers. I was like, what's kind of going on over there? And they're like, oh, this is where they're streaming from. I'm like, oh, cool, like, can we talk
Are you
to
feeding
them?
them? Are you giving them water?
And I was like, so like, do we talk to them? And they're like, no, you just kind of.
It's like a big don't disturb the
No,
animals
no,
sign.
seriously, like you couldn't talk to them, and I was like, oh man, that sucks, because there was like one or two streamers there I really liked. I wanted to talk to, I thought it'd be cool to meet them, but it wasn't like a meet and greet thing. It was like you watch and play. I was like, all right, well, I'm getting a little big for our britches here, guys.
Well, I'll try and speak to that a little bit, and I might refrain from saying too much so as not to get myself in trouble, as I still work for Xbox. But yeah, I think that kind of speaks to what a big problem internally with Mixer was, and that is that one hand kind of didn't know what the other one was doing. So there was the partner management side of things, and I'm not speaking ill of them. I'm friends with a lot of them. All the partner managers were really great. But there's kind of the partner management side, and then like the front-facing Mixer side, and they kind of just weren't jiving a lot of the time. And when I got laid off, and when they brought on Ninja and Shroud, they were going full force with partner. Like everything was partner focused. It was all about the partner streamers, and that's what they changed all the original programming to, was being highly partner focused. And so I think they kind of didn't manage to understand that the partners were people that the audience would want to still interact with. They weren't celebrities. They're not Kevin Bacon. They're still human beings that people see them as their friends. It's the audience will want to chat with them and get to know them.
It felt from a perspective of someone who was like, well, I kind of helped you grow your channel too. Like I had a part in this. I know I didn't do anything near what they did. You know what I'm saying? But like,
right.
It was weird because you felt that more over at the Facebook booth at the same PAX, right? Where they were like, don't even come in here. Like literally, like you couldn't even come in there. And Twitch had this weird like lounge, but you could go in and meet streamers, but it was kind of not. It was kind of more for the more famous of their streamers to just be seen, almost like a red carpet. And I was like, Mixer didn't need a red carpet. Mixer needed the opposite. Like, hey, come in here and hang out with us.
Yeah, we need it to be the scrappy kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this is for the people. This isn't for the the elite. This is for everybody. Come on in here and hang out.
That's so weird to me because I literally hadn't heard of Facebook gaming until late last year.
Wait till you saw their booth. If you would have saw their booth, you would have thought that they were like the industry leader. Like, it was ridiculous.
Their booth was like the size of Warner Brothers' booth.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like there was like Sony, Nintendo, Facebook gaming, like in terms of size, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
What the hell?
It was weird. But I'm not
like. They think Oculus is that big or something?
It wasn't even that.
So confused.
I don't even think it was focused on Oculus.
It wasn't. It wasn't focused on anything. Let me transition to PAX.
It was just like a giant white F in the middle of nowhere.
So remember earlier when I said that I felt like PAX this year, I kind of like lost the focus in terms of like focusing on, hey, this is where we let our fans play our games for companies, right? This PAX kind of was like, look at all these other services that are outside of game developers, right? Facebook gaming and all these other ones, right? PAX, when I went 2 years ago, this is just kind of like a weird aside, right? I couldn't find a place to sit down, like sit down in a chair, like a human being would want to do, right? And like, so like there would be various booths with various like gamer chairs, and I would sit down and I'd be like, oh, cool, I'm just gonna sit down and rest. And people would be like, hey man, these are like demo chairs, so like you can't really sit down in there for too long. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I went
like
to PAX.
The chairs, the merch.
Yeah. I went to a PAX like 4 or 5 years ago, and I literally had my then baby strapped to my front, right? Like in one of those like baby Bjorn. I went through an entire PAX with that, and my back hated me for that, right? But like there'd be people like, hey man, you look like you need to take a load off. Why don't you go sit, hang out here for a little bit? Thanks, man, appreciate that. This PAX, there was none of that. I literally bought Aorus products, right, for my recent PC build. Only because they were the only booth that let me sit down for as long as I wanted. So shout out to Aorus. They had these orange chairs. They had a pretty big area, and they were like, I sat down and they're like, oh man, these are comfy chairs. I'm like, yeah, I really like this chair. And I was like, hey man, the Nintendo booth is right next door. My wife and my friends are waiting in line for Nintendo. It's like a 2-hour line. My back's killing me. I just want to sit down for a couple minutes. They're like, oh yeah, man, sure. Sit down, take a load off, sit as long as you like. And I was like, I'm gonna buy your guys' stuff from here on out.
That's so funny because I didn't even think about that because I would so I was when I was working at PAX I was running like interview crews, so we were running all around the expo with a bunch of cameras and audio gear and stuff. And we would just be kind of like squatting like by the mixer booth, just like I'm sure we looked like so janky, like we looked like hobos in mixer gear with all our junk.
But I mean, really, like, how weird is it to be at a gaming convention you can't find a place to sit down? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not playing video games standing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an arcade.
So I still think about that, and I remember just seeing like there was this feeling among the crowd, and it was like you have all these streaming booths doing nothing. I mean, they were ghost towns for the most part, right? And it's like they took up all this floor space, and they wouldn't let you go in there in their little lounge area, and it felt very like I don't know, like some like 1984 I want to tear down the system type shit, right? like I can't find a place to sit, and you've got all this real estate where nobody's even using it. For
it's almost like imposing a class structure
exactly
on a convention.
Exactly. And the whole root of this particular convention was, hey, there's something else for all these people to go do, and it's called E3. This one's for us, right? That's the root of PAX. And now it's just like, yeah, I know we said all that shit initially, but look, Facebook needs 5,000 square feet of nothing to sit there and just have a giant blue F in the middle of the show floor.
Facebook needs its own, like, freaking McMansion.
That's really so funny, and it's something I hadn't even thought about, but it did occur to me very briefly when I got to go to the, I think they were advertising Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, my very first PAX that I was working at, and we got to go in the back, and we got to get the whole tour without waiting in line, and they gave us all these strawberry milkshakes that they were giving away to people who went through the booth. And I was like, yeah, I got a strawberry milkshake, and I didn't have to wait in line, and I'm being paid to be here. This is awesome.
Well, PAX has always been generous with their media badges, too. I bet you money that if we said, hey, we run a podcast, Merve, we could get PAX media badges. So that's one thing I will say to their credit. But the problem is I think other people have figured out that system in a way that it's like right now media is half of PAX, and it feels weird.
I'm sure you must have seen, because I saw it, about 800 people walking around with like selfie sticks narrating their journey through the expo hall.
It's really weird because it's a bad feeling when you've been waiting in line for 2 hours and you don't get your turn at the game because somebody with a media badge showed up and took your turn.
I tried not to look other human beings in the eye when I did that.
I did the enforcer thing.
At least you weren't periscoping while you were doing it.
I did the enforcer thing one year, and I actually was like the enforcer who shuttled around Blair Herter, Morgan Webb, and I can't remember the other guy. He was kind of their goofier one, but back when G4 was a thing, and I got them basically from panel to panel or from thing to thing, just by knowing the convention floor kind of well. And like it was kind of back then, like they were legitimately media, and there wasn't a lot of other media there at the time. So like, people would get out of their way when they would show up with the big camera. It was like, oh, cool, I got to meet, Morgan Webb because at least she was a personality, But it doesn't have that same feeling sometimes when PAX did this thing this year where there was content creator badges, right? So like some YouTuber, nobody's ever heard of is taking your place at a game you waited 2 hours to play, So that's my PAX rambling real quick. But, I thought that would have been, man, and that mixer booth had prime real estate.
It really did.
And it was in between like 4 of the most populated areas. How different could Mixer have looked had they were bringing people into their booth or saying, hey, you know what? We can set you up right now to stream on Mixer. Log in an account. We're going to let you stream right here live from PAX. It'll be your first Mixer stream, right? That could have had so much of a different feeling as a booth compared to what everybody else was doing. I think had they really kind of leaned into that community part of it that Mixer had already, rather than trying to say, yeah, well, we're rock stars, and you guys can sit out here and watch the zoo.
Yeah. So I think they kind of course corrected at E3 a little bit. The most recent E3, which I guess was 2019. God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wait, when is E3? Was it 2018 that I'm
July
thinking of?
must have been 2018, right? Because they
Oh
canceled.
God.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm losing all sense of goddamn time.
Wait, E3 happened last year? Was Mixer not at E3 2019?
I can't remember when I was laid off. I think I was laid off right after E3, so it must have been 2019. So anyway, so they had a more everybody focused presence at E3. We were actually kind of outside of the E3 hall. I say we, like I still work there. We were outside of the Microsoft Theater in like this big inflatable dome.
Oh,
and
wow.
they had this so you would go into this igloo looking thing.
I might have walked. I was still living in LA at the time. I think I walked past that.
Oh yeah, you should have come in. It was air conditioned. It was great. So you would walk into this big inflatable igloo looking thing, lay down on these weird like rocking chair things almost, but you were like laying down fully, and then they played this absolutely baffling cartoon introduction to what Mixer was, and I turned to the camera guy I was working with, who didn't know anything about Mixer. He was there just to film interviews. And I turned to the camera guy after the little animated story about what Mixer was, and I said, "So did that clarify anything about what Mixer is to you?" And he said, "No, not at all." And there's like flying hamburgers and pizzas. What was that all about? And I said, "Yeah, I still don't think we're doing a great outreach job." But at least you got some swag. I think you got some like keychains or something from that booth.
I mean, that drives so much of the PAX experience. I'm not surprised that they ran with that. So yeah, I mean, just kind of in general though, I had a very high feeling of Mixer, and when it kind of cratered, I felt bad, and I mean, not just for you personally, but for the other people who put a lot of work into it. And I kind of wanted to see kind of where my streamer friends landed, because it seemed to them it was very abrupt. It was not something that they had hearing about, planned about. But even from my end, I mean, I kind of had the feeling like, hey, this can't last forever, because it's just not growing at the rate I thought it would be by now.
Yeah, and I hope I don't get myself in trouble here, but even when we were working there, we knew we were not going to retire at that job.
I mean, I don't think people at Twitch will retire at Twitch, if you want to be careful about it, because it's just such a follow the crowd type service, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure people at MySpace originally thought nothing's going to come along and destroy MySpace, and I bet you people at Facebook are thinking it right now. But I'll tell you, if I worked at Facebook, I wouldn't be. You know what I mean? So there's potential when you're a technology based on popularity that goes any day. Just the cool kids move for some reason, right? Yep. But I just want to kind of maybe get from your standpoint, like, what was it like for maybe like the differences between what you guys saw and maybe what the partners saw?
Oh, as far as Mixer shutting down?
Yeah.
I guess I can't really speak to the partner experience because I was so like removed from that side of things. When I did speak to partners, and again, hopefully I don't get myself in trouble, it seems like some streamers, some people who do streaming professionally, are a little bit removed from reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think they might, at least a couple of the people I talked to, I'm sure there were much more business savvy people than some of the folks I talked to. And again, I have friends who are streamers, so I'm not painting all of them with a broad brush by any means. But I think some of them thought they were going to be doing it forever. Some of them thought like, yeah, we're going to overtake Twitch anytime.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then on the other hand, I also saw a bunch of partners getting really frustrated with the process because I think there was a lot of turnover in the partner management side of the world. They were doing different initiatives every other month and kind of like doing like different, you had to meet different metrics all the time. And I think there wasn't a whole lot of cohesion on that side of things.
Yeah.
And just like at a fundamental level, it gets really frustrating when your point of contact changes every few months.
Yeah. Absolutely.
one of the perspectives I got from it too was just kind of seeing, like in a way, like the partnership metrics, right? I had a friend who wanted to basically switch over to Mixer, kind of in like, and he was confused, just very confused by the metrics. They kind of shifted so many times. For a while, it was a lot easier to get partnered. For people who don't understand, partnered is when you can basically start getting paid for streaming rather than just doing it for fun. There's certain metrics you have to meet: number of viewers, hours streamed. Every service kind of has their own list of, hey, in order to be partnered, this is what you've got to do. And I think Mixers was probably considered to be one of the easier ones to get partnered on, even more so than YouTube or Twitch or Facebook. But I think that some of it had changed kind of in the later days, where they were maybe looking more for you to bring an audience to Mixer rather than the other way around, which I thought was kind of a writing on the wall type scenario.
And then I don't know if you guys followed the controversy that kind of put, a little bit of a nasty stank on the end of Mixer. But there was some racial and kind of workplace animosity that came out kind of right at the end. And so I think I was seeing a tiny little bit of that because that was all in the partner world. Yes,
I think they specifically said it was partner relations that was mostly going on.
Yeah. From my point of view, everything was great. But yeah, I think, and again, not to get anybody in trouble or get myself in trouble, but I think there was just a lot of turmoil kind of in that side of things, both from the business perspective and just the interpersonal interaction perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Something we don't always realize is that organizations can be very siloed, and like, my past workplace in LA, I would hear about all sorts of drama going down on like 5 doors down the hall, and I would have no involvement in it whatsoever, really understand what was going on, but you end up kind of feeling the downstream effects of that drama 3-4 months down the line.
Oh yeah. And I work in insurance, and people have called me yelling about the company I work for, and I'm like, man, do you know how big we are? Like, I like, one, I can't even look at your claim if I wanted to. It's illegal. But two, I mean, we're, I can't tell you why everything's state by state and this and that. But it feels like a cop out to tell your friends, I don't know about what's going on with this. But at the same time, I get it from the perspective of sometimes companies are just so big, we just don't interact with enough of it to tell you, what's really going on.
Especially Xbox is divided up into, I think it's 5 or 6, maybe even 7 different pillars. Mm-hmm. And even within those pillars, you have a bunch of different groups. Like, I work for Xbox Design, which is part of the Xbox Product Services, or Xbox Research and Development. And like, there's so many different, it's like an octopus. There's so many different things going on that maybe don't necessarily merge in together.
Was there like a feeling like maybe early in the days, like, maybe we can pull this off. Maybe we can, replace Twitch, or maybe we can be, at least in that kind of conversation. It was like, how often, I guess, did those kind of like things come up? Was that at least like a feeling at some point, or was it always kind of like, it's us against the world and maybe we'll pull this off, but
I mean, I think when I first started working there, we always knew that we were the underdogs. We had no illusions that we were, in a better place than we were. But I think there was, at least at the beginning, a certain sense that we could make a lot of headway being integrated into Xbox already. Mm-hmm. But that turned out to be our downfall because PlayStation especially, I think what we needed to do to kind of expand was to get integrated with other platforms.
Yeah.
And I think we were making a little bit of headway with Nintendo when I got laid off, but PlayStation especially did not want to play ball with us.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I think, for a million reasons, number one being Xbox being their main competitor. Like, why in God's name would you work with them?
It's this generation, I know we're getting a little bit off topic, this generation's kind of in a story of every other platform playing ball except for Sony platforms.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
a
The whole crossplay debacle.
I mean, a little bit of that pride before the fall, though, if you ask me, because I'm going to be interested to see what happens. I mean, other companies have been on the top before too, and we've seen this exact story play out where you can't have that level of too bad, we're big, we're not going to play, because it grinds people down, and more than anything right now, the console you play on, the system you play on, is where your friends are, and that's it,
Yep.
And I mean, all I played last gen was PS4, because I played a lot of Destiny, when it came out, and I didn't play a lot of Xbox. And then when Destiny 2 hit PC, I haven't even turned my PS4 on outside of, a few exclusives here and there. So it can change just that quick for everyone,
Yeah.
So
yeah, for me personally, I turn on the PlayStation when I want to play a story-driven game like Death Stranding or God of War, and I turn on the Xbox when I want to play with my buddies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I mean, it also helps that all my friends also work for Xbox, but that's, besides the point.
Yeah, and like for me, all my friends are on PC, and that's where I game with friends, and then solo is on the PS4 or the Switch.
Right.
So yeah, it all depends on like where you kind of are. But it's kind of a shame that we're in a situation where platform holders aren't really willing to play ball with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that did, as you point out, affect Mixer ultimately.
Yeah. So I guess going back to what I was saying about the kind of vibe when we first worked there was, we thought maybe we could carve out our own space into the streaming world, but I think we caught on pretty quickly that that just wasn't going to happen, because so I produced several different news style shows. For instance, what did I do? I did a PlayStation focused show, ironically.
The Blue Show, right?
Blue Show.
Yeah.
I helped produce and write the Red Show. I produced, wrote, and yeah, that's the Nintendo one. Sorry. I produced, wrote, and directed This Week in Esports, which was obviously an esports news show. Was that it? I want to say there's a couple more. And we kind of had the feeling that we didn't have the feeling, we knew this outright, that we were just kind of the 1 foot into the pool kind of introduction into hopefully getting Nintendo and PlayStation to open up their doors a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what our function was. And then once it became obvious that wasn't happening, once our viewership wasn't climbing at all, like we had some very loyal viewers, but we just weren't gaining any. And I think once that became apparent, we all saw the writing on the wall.
That's kind of a hard spot to be in, though, right? Because like consoles especially are very territorial, right?
Oh yeah.
So you're basically like doing a show about the competitor behind enemy lines, and then they're expecting, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Of all the shows on that channel, I thought there would have been a really like an expectation, like, hey, this one's probably not going to grow. Because...
Well, and that was the troubling thing. Like, on the one hand, we're constantly saying like, oh no, Mixer is platform agnostic. We're not just relegated to the Xbox. You can play any kind of platformer or any kind of platform that you want and stream on Mixer. And at the exact same time, we couldn't talk about certain games because Xbox had worked out a marketing deal with certain games. So I want to say we couldn't talk about Fallout 76 like at all.
Wow.
Not that turned out to be a huge loss, but we couldn't mention it because there was like a whole bunch of Xbox marketing stuff. So we were really hamstrung in what we were trying to do, while at the same time saying, oh no, we're platform agnostic. We love PlayStation,
Yeah. I felt that especially with PC stuff, because it felt like Mixer wanted the PCers, to feel welcome and stuff like that. And obviously that's, I think, where the majority of your streamers were, just because of, tech alone type issues.
Mm-hmm.
But I also kind of get the feeling where there would be like some PC exclusive games, and it just felt like I wasn't seeing anyone streaming them or talking about them or anything. I don't know if it was like a partnership deal or if just the audience or what, but it always kind of felt a little bit weird as an outsider that like there would be a huge PC release and I would see 0 people on Mixer streaming it, right? I'm trying to think of like specific examples, but you would just see it now and then. There'd be a big release, and it'd be like, okay, let's go see who's streaming this new game, and the answer was no one. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also just like one of the challenges in general with juggling multiple platforms is like even media organizations that are separate from the platforms. Like if you look at, say, Revision 3 was big for a while, and then they eventually collapsed, even though they had all their dedicated shows, because this is just a really hard space to gain traction in general.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Like, it's just really hard to get eyeballs on stuff.
And also, you're kind of dealing with this whole thing where, like, especially when Mixer was kind of like making its way, it seemed like the only thing anybody in the world wanted to watch was Fortnite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Fortnite sucked up all the air in the streaming world, and it was like most people who've been around, like I'm just talking about like me, like as a player of games, was like, this ain't gonna last forever. This is, you know what I mean? This is a weird little bubble. And if I was a person, I would not try to be a dedicated esports, all I play is, Fortnite person, because there's going to be a cream that rises to the top. It's going to be around for a little bit, and then you're not going to hear about Fortnite in 5 years. But, everybody knows that, but it's hard to tell people that, right? But yeah. Fortnite was sucking so much. I mean, Twitch everywhere. It was just sucking so much of the air out of the room, where if you weren't streaming Fortnite, you pretty much weren't even playing. You pretty much weren't even streaming, because that's all anybody anywhere wanted to watch, it seemed.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of that affect Mixer, where I was like, I would watch people who were kind of like, by nature, I would call them like a variety streamer, like a good personality playing, maybe like smaller games here and there and stuff. But they were forcing themselves to play Fortnite poorly. It's the way I would put it, and it's like, well, this is what they want. I guess I'm going to stream this all day.
Yeah. Whenever I wanted to troll any of the shows I wasn't working on, that's what I would say in chat, is play Fortnite.
And like, you even see this in the Let's Play world, where like Achievement Hunter gets stuck playing Minecraft and GTA 5 day in and day out, and like, it is a job for them. They're getting paid to do this, but like at a certain time, it's demoralizing, where like you play Minecraft 5 hours a day, and then maybe get to play something else interesting for a little bit later in the week.
Well, like, specifically for Mixer, I feel like what it kind of did was it like stunted some growth for streamers who naturally probably would have been better at something else, but they felt like all people wanted to watch and all they could play for whatever reason was Fortnite, right? Like somebody who might have naturally been a fun RPG streamer to watch as they, play through a Skyrim, play where they're, max luck or something, right? That person was just kind of crushed by Fortnite, and they would look at the view totals and say, damn, there's 50,000 people right now watching Ninja, what the hell am I doing streaming Skyrim to 15 people,
Yeah.
And some of that is like a victim of circumstances, and some of that is just, that's where everybody was at that time. I watch Twitch streamers who now this day are probably playing whatever the opposite of Fortnite is, struggle and play Fortnite for a month or two, just because that's what it seemed like everyone was playing. But yeah, I think that was kind of a weird / interesting time for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's been kind of an interesting time in the industry as a whole, as it's like coming down from the Fortnite high, and Fortnite's now embroiled in its own weird controversy that we're not going to break down today. But the way streaming has kind of transitioned from being this very niche thing to being the mass market thing that just teenagers watch these days, instead of television. We're in times where the media environment is just changing so much and changing so rapidly that a game that's popular on Twitch 1 month is just gonna collapse the next, and it's really hard to make predictions about where to take a platform when you're operating in that environment.
Right, and the other thing is, you can tell somebody who wants to be a streamer, okay, well, hey, get good at this game because this is what people are watching. But you can't tell people who want to get into streaming, hey, have a good personality, or be, you know what I mean? Hey, why don't you work on being interesting? Yeah, exactly. So I think
be better.
Yeah. I think some of that is just going to be by nature, is like people just aren't going to be able to, react to that. But I think the other thing would be, the more people you watch get into streaming, the harder it is, the less it seems like something that you're going to pay bills with. And hopefully the more, what I'm seeing at least streaming wise on some of the thing is this kind of turn to like celebrities using it as like a social media outlet almost. That's what I'm seeing more and more on Twitch. Gary Whitta running an Animal Crossing talk show, like who would have thought that would have been.
Phil Spencer even appeared on it.
Yeah. Who would have thought that would have been like one of the biggest quarantine outlets for people's, things, but it makes sense. So that's where I think if you want to talk about where it's going or where it's headed, I think you're going to have that using the format almost like a YouTube that has comments almost, which isn't bad.
I think that's probably exactly the case.
I think we're gonna see more real-time machinima too.
Right.
And like talk shows and stuff like that. That's something that Twitch never really capitalized on that much for whatever reason. Like I know Twitch has some official programming, but it was never as prominent as it was say on Mixer.
Well, they're probably tied to Amazon because I've seen a lot of, hey, let's watch this Amazon show. What was that one where the people died and went to that weird version of heaven?
The Good Place?
No.
See, here's the thing about Amazon Prime. I know it has originals.
Yeah.
I just, like, you could name an Amazon original, and I would believe you if you said it existed.
So I don't know what it's like. It's like people die, but they get their body uploaded into like a digital consciousness. I can't. It wasn't a big hit. It's not anything you.
Yeah.
Merve. Was it like a black comedy of sorts?
Kind of. Yeah. And it's like you have to buy ad time to basically stay in their version of heaven. Almost like it was weird. But anyway,
that sounds like the most depressing show I've ever heard of.
Completely. Like. Of all the things I want to watch right now, a show that grapples with immortality and death, yeah, I'm good. But I remember, the only reason I remember this is because Ammunition, who's a popular streamer, but she usually does like hardcore FPS content, like Rainbow Six Siege at the highest level type stuff, right? Did a sponsored stream where she did like a let's watch of that show. And I was like, what the fuck is this? like one of those reactions where I was like, you guys don't – this is just, hey, this person's popular. We have this show. Put them together, and I'm sure it's going to work out. Does that make sense? I
think that speaks to one thing that companies are really, really grappling with right now is that they do not know how to monetize this content at all.
Yeah. It's like, okay, great. They're viewing it, but how do I get them to pay, right?
Right.
And, I mean – I think Mixer had an interesting answer in how you pay the partners, which was Sparks. Sparks to me is maybe the best idea that Mixer had that Twitch has tried to copy with channel points, but it ain't even close to the same, right? Sparks was a way where through your viewership you could pay your partner, the person you're watching, right? Twitch doesn't have like that. It has subs where you subscribe to them and you pay them $5 a month. I think it's like a 50-50 cut between Amazon and the streamer, but Sparks was like an alternative currency basically, right? And I don't know exactly how it worked, but the more Sparks you got, the more money you got somehow. Right. But I think the toughest thing right now is that the big streaming platforms have bigger parent companies who get how monetizing what they do normally works. Amazon gets how to make money off of shipping you shitty stuff from China. They get that. They do it all day, right? But what they don't really get, I think, as far as Twitch is, well, shit, we got 50,000 people watching Shroud fart around in DayZ, but man, only like half of them are even paying us anything, and we want to get ads, but as soon as the ads show up, they start putting on these ad blockers, and you know, they complain about the ads and nobody wants to watch the ads, and the streamers don't want to do the ads because it takes away from watching their content. How do we find this nice thing? So while streaming is profitable, I'm sure it ain't anywhere near Amazon or Microsoft or Facebook or YouTube standards for what profitable is, right?
No, and I think Google has at least managed to make headway into making YouTube profitable, but then they're also having to face like issues that I'm sure they've never foreseen with like YouTube content creators adopting children and then giving them up. So like, like there's
what the?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, have you not heard about this story?
They adopted a kid.
We can do a whole podcast on just that story.
What we will do an episode one day on just like weird internet shit. But like I don't have the mental capacity to process this right now.
So I think what you're seeing too though with YouTube is by making YouTube profitable for YouTube or Google, they've made YouTube less profitable for the content creators, right?
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
what you're constantly seeing them complain about is why was this demonetized? Why was this copy strike? Right? So it's a weird give and take, right? Because what's going to happen to YouTubers who start getting demonetized? I'll tell you what, because I have friends who are YouTubers and they're on Twitch right now, right? Because it's like, shit, at least I can guarantee I'm getting a cut rather than I don't know if this video is going to make me a cent that I worked on for 2 months, right?
That's been like a huge problem. And like, content rating like Mixer did creates its own issues, but something that YouTube has steadfastly refused to do, even though everybody, tells them it's something they might need. And that, like, it's kind of a problem of their own creation because they don't want to address other problems.
Right.
And I guess in the end, they found a way to make it only hurt the content creators. But it does frustrate people, and they do end up leaving the platform.
Right. And there's a reason that people look back at 5 or 6 years ago as the golden age of YouTube, and it was because that's where you could get paid to make creative content and get seen by lots of people, right? But right now, do you know where the money is on YouTube? Is making 10-minute videos of Cinderella kissing Snow White and, putting a million clickbait titles in and hoping that it somehow stays kid-friendly enough that it just shows up on weird playlists, right? Like, it's not in the hours long of editing creative stuff that it used to be, right? You're not seeing mini.
I don't know how you have children in a world with YouTube. Like,
it's
that,
insane.
Just that idea freaks me out.
Yeah, I come home and I'm like, I know we're not supposed to do it, right? But there is times where, like, look, I need an hour, right? I need an hour to go do something. Here's my phone, right? And, I always go back through and see what he's watching. And I'm like, what even is some of this shit? It's a 2-hour Daddy Finger remix. The song Daddy Finger, Daddy, it's 2 hours of that.
I don't know that song.
Okay, well, I didn't make it up. It's extremely popular on YouTube.
That bothers me a lot.
Yeah. So it's but they do it with like Marvel characters for 2 hours. And then what they do, this is the fucking insidious shit, is they put an ad every 30 seconds on a 2-hour long video, right? And guess what? My 3-year-old don't know. He watches the whole damn ad, right? So he thinks it's, 30 seconds of song, 30 seconds of an ad, 30 seconds of a song. And, and you're like, oh, what have I just done? I just made some, horrible person richer. But that's where the money is on YouTube. And that shit is what Google's going to figure out, and they're going to shut it down. And then there's going to be no money in YouTube. And,
it's going to keep going around in a cycle.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, like you mentioned, a lot of these platforms are owned by larger companies, and sometimes they try to leverage their streaming platform or their video platform for cross promotion, like they did with this show whose name is eluding us. So clearly the cross promotion didn't work. But like the weirdest thing for me was Amazon not really promoting Crucible on Twitch.
Yeah.
And then like unreleasing it. That still blows my mind that you have the biggest streaming platform in the world and you can't get people excited about a game designed for streaming. That's messed up, right?
That game's got problems, I'll tell you that. You can usually – so for all the good and bad things about Twitch communities, there's definitely kind of an anti-authoritarian stance on a lot of that stuff, right? I've seen it in a lot of Twitch chats where they'll basically say, this is Amazon versus this is Twitch, right? Like some streamer will be doing something, some sponsored content, and be like, oh, Amazon content is what they call it. Or they'll say, oh, it's Amazon content, right? Versus Twitch content. So there is some of that stuff brewing.
It's the same company.
Yeah,
it says Twitch by Amazon Prime.
Yeah, exactly. But you know how like when you were probably a teenager or whatever, and like it was like I'm not gonna do what they tell me, but I'm still gonna buy Rage Against the Machine, which is produced by Capitol Records, right? You know what I mean, right? Like there's a feeling of standing up to somebody by saying or doing things that just isn't true. I mean, everybody's getting their money somehow, right?
And now you do what they told you.
Yeah. But I think that
like I'm not even that cynical about it. I just think like I'll believe in the lyrics of the music or whatever, but I understand where my money's going at the end of the day. Right. And we can all sit here and say, oh, there's no ethical consumption or capitalism, fine. But like, I think you have to be aware of, like, you have to have an awareness of where your money's going and whom you're paying at the end of the day, right?
I think the hardest thing though about Twitch at some point though is I wonder, you'll never know, but I wonder how much like of a operating cost negative Twitch is, because I bet you it's a lot. I mean, I'm just thinking about like bandwidth and servers, VODs staying on there forever. I bet you that the top 5% of streamers is probably 98% of the income of Twitch, right?
And so Amazon's not afraid to operate at a loss. Weren't they selling the Kindle? Aren't they still selling the Kindle at a loss?
Yeah. And I mean, Microsoft.
I mean, Amazon operated at a loss for much of its early years of existence until it became profitable. It was just they kept willing to pour money into it and undercut other people and kill the competition. And now look at how profitable they are.
Yeah, but I just wonder with Twitch if it's going to have the same end result, because in my mind, if you're sitting there and you're the guy doing the books, you're saying, look, why are we paying this partner guy who's got 50 people view and who also view our top guys, by the way. They also subscribe to our 10,000 viewer guy. Why are we paying these smaller guys to do anything for us? They're not bringing in ad revenue, really. The subs that they're getting are, we're getting a cut of 200 subs on the high end, but we're also subsidizing all this other stuff for them. Does this make sense long term as a company? I don't know. I feel like streaming isn't going to be a thing for long in a weird way.
No, I kind of agree. But on the other hand, I think the entire gaming industry, the profits, the economics of gaming do not make the least bit of sense to me.
Yeah. And then you hear they make more money than movies. And it's like, how?
Yeah. But they lose money selling consoles and but they're making money. My brain. That's where I will say, and I've been on the Microsoft train for a while, I think digital distribution purely as a platform is what makes the most sense. That's why Steam has the market share they do, right? Because I don't, what happened when Steam tried to make a console? Oh, I'm sorry, a Steam machine. What happened then, Or the Steam controller that you can get for $4 right now. I mean, there's companies that. But I entirely agree with you, but then I installed a physical copy of God of War this morning on my Xbox, and it took like 10 minutes, and I was like, oh, maybe there is something to this physical media.
Yeah, I know. That's the pros and cons. Even when you've got fast internet and you get home and you get excited about a game, you're like, oh, God. Now I gotta...
All right, I'm going to cook dinner,
3
take
hours
a shower,
set aside,
and feed my cat and vacuum, and then I'll be able to play.
My poor PlayStation, every time I turn it on, like the 4 months worth of updates it's got to do every time. I'm like,
I don't understand how my PS4 which is wired via Ethernet updates slower than my Switch over Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean, to be fair, the Switch, for all its other like bare bones internet woes, is really snappy for some reason in terms of just getting stuff quickly onto the machine. I don't know what the wizards at Nintendo worked out to make it update so quickly, but like the PS4 is so slow.
It's infuriating sometimes. I mean, like, especially because it's like those type of single player games I just want to jump on and play,
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like, I don't care if I can't connect to PSN right now. It doesn't affect me at all for playing, 2 hours of Spider-Man or whatever. But it drives me crazy.
My boyfriend and I will get like a couple of whiskeys in and we'll be like, oh, we should play GTA 5. And then, oh, okay, it's 45 minutes worth of updates. And by the time that's done, we don't want to play anymore.
You'll be like 8 whiskeys in.
It's like, we're whiskeyed out. We can't play PlayStation now. But that's, I guess, long term, I guess my concern would be is if I was a streamer, I'd be definitely having eyes towards the future. And I think the person who does is named Ninja. I think he saw the writing on the wall and cashed out, and I think, because people are like, where's he going to stream? Who cares? You know what I mean? Who cares where he does?
He's a millionaire, right?
He lives on an island somewhere now.
Yeah, I mean, he is less concerned about where he's going to stream than probably anybody else on the planet, to be honest with you. And I think that's going to be the future, is these streamers who realize, like, look, I'm an interesting person who creates interesting content and puts effort into it. If I can get an audience to come with me no matter where I go, I'm not going to be beholden to the Amazons and Googles and Microsofts of the world, right? And I think that's the goal now for these big streamers. I don't know.
I mean, it's also kind of a fantasy though. Like for a while, everybody was when Dr. Disrespect got banned from Twitch. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's because Dr. Disrespect is gonna launch his own streaming service with Spotify."
Doesn't need to.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to stream another day in his life based on what he got from Twitch, right? So I mean, I think that's, you know how like there was like YouTube famous and then there was internet famous and then there was like movie star, right? So I think some of these guys are saying the money is in movie star. The money ain't in YouTube famous or internet famous, right? So unless you're going to push through that barrier where you're not going to be responsible to anyone else for, paying bills, and you don't have to do anything with your content you don't want to do. I mean, like, even though that only applies to 1 or 2% of people, guess what every streamer who streams right now thinks? I'm going to be that 1 or 2%, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be, I'm going to
Yeah, I mean, but what's their ceiling? It's like a sci-fi original. They're not going to be
Sharknado.
in blockbuster films, right?
But, when hearing that Ninja had a part cut out of the latest Jumanji, I don't know if you heard that. He was going to.
Oh, my God.
Right?
How? What did he contribute?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you know why? Because someone somewhere at whoever the hell produced Jumanji goes, man, you know what kids like? Ninja. in his, you know what I mean? That's it. That's the barrier right now, is to trick the olds or the non-gamers or whatever you want to call them into saying, this is where it's at. This guy has the pulse,
The kids sure love this blue-haired boy.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, but I got a nephew, and let me tell you what he watches.
Oh, God.
And that's kind of where I see streaming going, is just make a big enough name for yourself so that you can get the hell out of streaming, and that's kind of a dead end. I wouldn't want to be.
And it's also only going to happen to like the top 0.1% of people.
Yeah, I think you have a better chance of being a professional football player than you do of being a professional streamer.
But how many kids are going to play football this year and with that dream? And how many people are going to take acting lessons and work as a waitress, with that dream? Yeah. And selling dreams is what America's always been about. That's some politics shit, but you know what I mean? We're selling a dream to these kids. And my kid wants to stream every day. Every day he asks me if he can start. I told him not till he's 11. That's our barrier. But every day he asks me, can he start streaming, And it's not because he really gives a shit about streaming. It's because he wants to be Ninja. He wants to have that cool personality where people can't wait. And, the feeling he feels when when his favorite streamer logs on and he can't wait to see what they're going to do that day. He wants that feeling, but on the other end of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not bad. It's not good, but
like my boss's teenage son is a streamer with some following, which is just a completely different world from, what I grew up in 15 years ago. Times have changed.
This is funny. I got a lawyer. That sounds way bigger than it is. I got a speeding ticket once and I hired a lawyer. Right? we got to talking about.
A lawyer.
Yeah, I got a lawyer. Yeah, he's a small time lawyer, but he got me out of the ticket, so good for him. But got into that conversation. I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about gaming, and so what he handed me was a business card for his nephew who streams, and I still think about that to this day.
That makes me want to throw up.
Isn't it weird though, right? Like my lawyer handed me not his own business card, but he handed me a business card for his nephew who streams. I still think about how weird that interaction was. And I mean, I'm not in LA. I'm not in Seattle. I'm not in some hotbed for tech. I'm in Raleigh, which, we do have Epic and a couple other companies, But I just think about that to this day. Hey, uncle, if you ever talk to anybody who plays games, give them this card so they'll watch my stream. And I mean, what an interaction, right? So I think about that a lot. So, yeah.
LA, for some weird reason, is not big on business cards. The one time I handed someone my business card in LA, they handed it back to me.
What industry did you work in?
I work in research.
So. I used to work in television, and I tell you what, I went out drinking one night and kind of blacked out and woke up at home and had about 10 business cards that I did not recognize at all. So I think that might be heavily industry dependent.
Yeah, I get a ton of business cards, but they're all from roofers, and that's not very exciting stuff. It's like, oh man, because they think they're in the company. What if you find somebody who needs a roof? No, I can't even refer them. They're just wasting paper giving it to me, but I don't tell them that because I don't like most roofers. But Anyway.
What I'm gleaning from this is that I should take that as a personal insult.
Yeah, Mark. Get some cards, dude.
Anyway, yeah. So anyway, this has been a really good discussion of like the streaming industry and where celebrity culture and everything is all heading. So I think it's time to call this podcast to a close. And let me just say, if you'd like to keep up to date with the podcast, you can follow us on our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com, where we post each episode along with a Linkdump that facts check. I can say words that fact checks. Facts checks. Like a charming thing from Paper Mario. Fast travel is called fax travel, and you literally just hop in a fax machine.
Okay, that's great.
That is one of the best parts.
That might be what just sold me on it.
Yeah, that's like the only good thing about it. No, I'm kidding. So we post a link up that fact checks all of our blathering. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for Avocado Gamescast. And we've talked a lot about the community that we're all a part of, The Avocado, which you can check out at the-avocado.org. All right.
Good one.
Thank you for joining me today in this discussion. And to our listeners, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye, Fortnite.